Welcome to the edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and this is Thursday, October the 19th. I'm trying to do as many videos as possible, maybe even more than one a week. It's just getting them recorded and getting them uploaded is what the issue is. And I want to, again, stick to the plan from last week of sticking to one idea, one fight, one fighter, or two fighters, and go from there. I know we just had a big card last weekend on Showtime with the junior middleweights and everything like that. But I'm going to talk about that another time, hopefully after this video. Fight I want to revisit from last month was a rematch between Roaman Chocolatitio Gonzalez and Sor Rungvisai. And by the way, just to let you guys know, if you do some research on BoxRec, you'll find out that Sira said Sor Rungvisai is not his real name anyway. The Thai fighters like to adopt names either of a club, a boxing club, or a nightclub, or a town, or a community, or something like that. And I'm going to talk more about that because this ties into something that happened in the 80s with KOSI Galaxy, and also the whole theme of this with Roaman Gonzalez basically struck me at about the same time the rematch happened of a movie I saw where art imitates life, but at the same time you wonder how far different real life is from art. Now getting to it, obviously, I don't remember whether I did a video recapping the first Roaman Gonzalez Sor Rungvisai fight, and it's a good thing I'm not looking at his name on paper, because the second I look at his name on paper I can't pronounce it. I want to put that G in there. Sor Rungvisai I'm speaking of. But let's review what happened. Basically, back in the late winter, early spring of this past year, there was a doubleheader on pay-per-view between, the headliner was Gennady Golovkin unifying titles with Danny Jacobs, and on the undercard, co-feature was Roaman Chocolatitio Gonzalez defending his WBC super flyweight title against Sor Rungvisai. Sor Rungvisai being the former champion who had lost his title on a somewhat controversial technical decision against Carlos Cuadras in Mexico. Everybody knew that Sor Rungvisai was tough. All you had to do was look at him before the fight, and you knew he was solid. He's very large for this weight division, whereas Chocolatitio's kind of on the normal to small side for this division. And one of the things that struck me in the first fight, obviously the scoring was horrendous, and I think that's what started my rampage about the judges need to be put in isolated rooms and held at gunpoint and score the fight by watching on high-definition television. Because I don't know in any way, shape, or form or alternate reality how the champion, the guy coming forward, making the fight, landing 250 more punches than the challenger, loses a majority decision. I just don't see it. Now, since that last fight, Gonzalez didn't fight again, and they fought this rematch in early September in the StubHub Center in, is it StubHub Center or the Home Depot Center in Carson, California? I guess it's the Home Depot Center. Anyway, as you all know, Gonzalez wasn't even in this fight as he came out firing again, and Sor Rungvisai basically held his ground and eventually caught Gonzalez wide open with a right hook in the fourth round, sending him to the canvas as he was throwing a right hand at the same time. And once he got up, he exchanged again and got caught again from the blind side with a right hook and was knocked clean out. Now, there was a lot of hubbubaloo by HBO over whether Gonzalez was mentally ready for this fight, whether he looked ready, whether something was different from him. And most of the time I disagree with them. This is one of the time where I think that those hunting dogs were on the right scent. I don't know what it is about the psyche of most professional athletes, as well as some actors and actresses and entertainers in Hollywood. But you can see a difference when a guy's been undefeated for a decade or more in the pros, and all of a sudden he's been a world champion, and all of a sudden he loses. Some of them are never the same. Not all of them, some of them are never the same. That aura of invincibility is stripped away from them. Now, there's more to this with these two fighters than that. And let me try to elaborate on what I'm talking about. In the first fight, after the second fight ended so dramatically and just absolutely abruptly, surprisingly, I went back and watched the first fight 3 or 4 times. looking for keys that would lead to what happened in the second fight. And one of the things that HBO has missed, one of the things that most writers have missed, is that in the first fight, where Gonzalez clearly, in my eyes, won the fight going away, he threw not only everything but the kitchen sink, he threw the kitchen sink at Sor Rungvisai over and over and over again. And never once did I think that Sor Rungvisai was on the edge of going down. His knees never buckled. He never stumbled. He did get backed up a few times, and he did give ground, and he got clipped. You know, it looked like he got buzzed once or twice in that fight. But we're talking about getting hit with clean punches from one of the best pound-for-pound punchers on the planet, and nothing happened. And I think that when they were preparing for this rematch, not only did the psyche of losing the first fight weigh very heavily on Roman Gonzalez's mind, I believe that when they went back and watched the tapes of that fight, of what he did wrong, what he did right, all this other stuff, he knew in his heart he hit this guy with everything he had, and nothing happened. And I was kind of worried about this before the fight. I still would have picked Gonzalez to win the fight, if I'm being honest with everybody. But for it to be as, basically the two of them are going to share probably the fight of the year. I don't give a damn what anybody says about Klitschko and Anthony Joshua. There was nowhere near the number of punches thrown or punches landed or the back and forth drama, constant back and forth drama in the Joshua Klitschko fight as there was in the first Sor Rungvisai Gonzalez, the Chocolatitio fight. And with that said, they're going to basically share, in my mind, the fight of the year. And Sor Rungvisai is going to be awarded the knockout of the year. There are other ones that might, like this just recent one with Charlo knocking out Big Mouth there. But that's for another show. What I'm trying to get at is that, yes, the psyche was affected by the loss that was stripped. But the reality was, if the judges would have given Gonzalez a close unanimous decision, a majority decision, we would never hear from Sor Rungvisai again. Gonzalez would have went on to more. He would have lost eventually, but he would have went on to other things, and there wouldn't have been this rematch. And basically, his career has been annihilated by this fighter. And look, Sor Rungvisai is the better fighter. Let's be clear. He, at this weight, he is better. Which leads me to segue into what I was going to talk about with the what do you call it? It's the psyche of the athletes, the boxers, and this and that. At the same time that this rematch was going on, I stumbled upon, going through the guide, the movies that, as I'm looking at an email that I'm getting at the same time this is how, okay, I was going through the guide on Comcast, Xfinity, whatever the hell it is, and looking through the pay channels, I came across this movie. I didn't go into it. Sometimes I'll highlight it, and then I'll read what it's about, and I'll decide whether I want to change the channel onto it or not. And it's kind of crazy how these movies come out without me ever seeing an ad for them, ever seeing a preview for them, ever seeing a commercial for them. And this one movie was with Al Pacino, and it was called Danny Collins, and it's basically based on a true story. But the idea of this movie, and what ties into Roman Gonzalez, is that Al Pacino plays like a 60-something, 70-something-year-old singer, and he's had a very wildly successful career. And if any of you have seen this movie, you understand. But the part I'm trying to get at that ties to Gonzalez is that his brain was thrown off kilter. He started off back in the early 70s wanting to be a singer-songwriter, kind of in the same mold as is John Lennon or Arlo Guthrie or somebody like that. Some quirkiness. You know what I mean? But being true to himself, and somehow his career got off path through management and other things, where he became very rich and famous for singing poppy kind of songs that were not part of his soul. And the movie starts out by basically saying that basically they're having a surprise birthday party for him, and his manager's played by Christopher Plummer. I don't know if many of you know who that is. And he brings him. He's about to get married to some 20-something, 30-something, model type or whatnot, who's basically messing around behind his back. And his manager comes to him and says, "I've got you a present." He goes, and he tells him, he goes, "You probably don't know this, but John Lennon wrote several letters to aspiring new artists back in the early 70s. And the letters got lost, and they never got delivered, never got mailed, whatever the problem was. And he wrote you one. And basically, a guy on eBay was selling it. So he basically has it framed, and he gives it to Al Pacino, and Al Pacino reads it, and it says everything in there that basically the letter says that, I like what you're doing. Stay true to yourself as you go on this journey. Be true to the music and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And basically what it is, it's the antithesis of what his career turned out to be. And this haunts him. And he immediately goes crazy into trying to fix all the rights that were wrong. He has a grown son out of, basically an illegitimate son in New Jersey. He goes and I didn't know this movie existed, but once I started watching it, I was like, holy crap. And then at the end, he basically writes a song in this Hilton hotel this little Hilton Garden hotel he's staying at the whole time he's in New Jersey, where Annette Bening is the manager, and he writes a song that's true to himself. And his manager tells him they're low on money, he needs to go back on tour, and he does a one-night thing with his son and his wife and his granddaughter, and his daughter-in-law is going to have a baby also, and another baby, and they go see him, and the crowd induces him into singing something, I don't know if it's called Baby Doll or whatever it is, but some poppy piece of crap. And Annette Bening's there, and he reverts right back to the bread and butter, what made him famous, and doesn't play the song that he wrote with her. And the point to this with Roman Gonzalez is that it's incredible how people who are in entertainment or in boxing their psyche is just so fragile that you look at this, the loss to Sor Rungvisai, and you think that Sugar Ray Leonard shook off a lot worse loss to Roberto Duran. He was humiliated by Roberto Duran, but he shook it off and he came back. Now understand, there are a lot of miles on Roman Gonzalez's odometer, and he has been stretched by the powers to be to basically perform at this utmost high level and keep going up in weight, for over a decade now. And with this said, one other example I was going to give you about the psychological fragility is also in the singing industry. Most of you don't know who this is, but way back when I was a kid, there were this brother and sister combo called the Carpenters. And it was a girl. The girl's name was Karen Carpenter. A lot of you old timers would know who I'm talking about. And one time she took a picture. She had the voice of an angel. It wasn't my kind of stuff, but you'll hear their songs used in movies and stuff like that. And they were brilliant together. The brother played the piano. She sang. It wasn't my kind of my style, but it was good stuff. And she took a picture one time, or a photograph, I think it was black and white, where she was wearing a turtleneck, and just an innocent picture. And somebody in her entourage, or her management, or her family, or something said, "Oh, you look chubby in that picture," or something like that. It sent her off on a death spiral. That one comment sent her off on a death spiral. She started starving herself. She had, I don't know if it was bulimicy or what it was, but she had it in her head that she was never going to be thin enough or look good enough or whatnot, and eventually starved herself to death. I think she died of something else. It may have been pneumonia or something, but that one thing killed this beautiful voice. And what I'm trying to say is that there are more things working that we can't see inside Roman Gonzalez's head. And I like I said, I think the matchup to begin with in Madison Square Garden was the wrong matchup. he hadn't looked good in his previous 3 fights, which were, as we know, against basically against McWilliams Arroyo. It didn't look like he was able to put a dent in him. Against Carlos Cuadras, he didn't look that great. And of course, in the first, I think he looked good against Sor Rungvisai in the first fight. But most people, I think, were, including me, were blinded by the fact that Sor Rungvisai had used his head so much in the first fight that everybody thought if the fight was on the level, then he was going to, Gonzalez was going to win this fight. Now, where does this leave this division? Because on the undercard, we got to see Naoya Inoue, the monster from Japan, who I wasn't all that impressed with in his fight, but I went back and watched his previous fights, including his title-winning effort over Omar Narvaez, who lost to 12 shutout rounds to, what the heck is this? Nonito Donaire. In the felt form, whatever you want to call it, to the theater. And here's the thing, and this is one thing to be excited about. Back in the 80s, in this same division, the WBC champion was Hiro Watanabe from Japan, from Osaka, Japan. He was a southpaw, very straight puncher in the same mold that Inoue is. Didn't have the power that Inoue does, but he was a very good boxer, and he turned his punches over like a Western fighter the same way Inoue does. And they were both southpaws. And Thailand, the WBA champion, was Chaoside Galaxy, probably the best fighter who ever fought at this division. 19 successful title defenses for the longest stretch of time, from 1987 all the way through 1991. He was the longest single reigning champion in boxing. I don't know whether they tried to make a unification fight between these two or not. Watanabe lost his title to Gilberto Roman in 1986 after a very stellar 4-year run, including attempts at unification. Talks are going on right now where they're trying to get a fight between Inoue and Sor Rungvisai in Japan. Sor Rungvisai is scheduled to fight on February 24th of 2018, Juan Francisco Estrada, who on that same card beat Carlos Cuadras in an elimination fight. What they thought were going to be a rematch with Chocolatitio. The fight is scheduled for Los Angeles tentatively, and again, that's the 24th of February. When I first watched this card, I thought to myself, there's no chance Sor Rungvisai is going to roll over him. Now, then I went back and watched Inoue fight, and Inoue has a lot of the same type of two-handed power and straight, crisp punching that reminds me of Alexis Arguello. He's kind of tall for that division, and it's like effortless power. Sor Rungvisai is wide open for a straight right hand. And even though Chocolatitio caught him with many of them, it was very similar to Sor Rungvisai basically caught a lot of Chocolatito's punches on the end of those punches. It's very similar to the way Pryor was out of range for Arguello's power. Now, most of you say, well, what would make Sor Rungvisai not be out of the range of Inoue's power? Inoue is a far straighter, narrower puncher than Chocolatitio, and he can reach a longer distance through a shorter travel, if that makes sense. And I am not sure who's going to win that fight, but I don't know if American TV is ever even going to get it, or if the money or the management's going to be right to put that fight together. Either way, it's can't miss. And I fully expect Sor Rungvisai to beat Estrada if they do fight. If that fight does go through, even if it is in LA in February, I expect Sor Rungvisai to come through that fight, totally unscathed. Estrada's going to make it probably more of a fight than Chocolatitio did, but nothing he throws, I don't think is going to have much more of an effect on Sor Rungvisai than what Chocolatitio did. Because like I said, Sor Rungvisai is extremely big in the legs, in the arms, in the torso for this division. Inawi has a totally different look to him, where he's like almost looks like a beanpole, but his punching technique is almost second to none. Now, whether he can take a punch or not is another story. All right, I went way overboard. That's going to be it for this edition. I'll try to be back. I do want to talk about Andre Ward and Crusher Kovalev, and as well as the fights that happened in the junior middleweight division, including the Charlo brothers. Thanks, everybody.